Level up your LA Kings experience with the new Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access. Enjoy great seats to the game along with premier dining inside the Lexus Club with all-you-can-eat food and non-alcoholic beverages. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings item and parking with your purchase. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn rewards on each purchase from the only ticket company that rewards you for buying. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings.
You're listening to an LA Kings podcast. For more episodes of this and every other Kings program, visit lakings.com/podcast.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kings Men. Today we've got an interview with someone incredibly important that you may not even know exists. We're talking to Kyle Lamkey. His title is Senior Director of Building Engineering and Operations, and among his responsibilities is overseeing the ICE at Crypto.com arena. I had him on because I saw a question pop up on social media about how the departure of the Clippers as a tenant at Crypto impacted the Kings' ability to maintain the ICE. But we wound up having a conversation that ranged all over the place, and of course, as soon as I stopped recording, we got into all kinds of additional details that I wish I had recorded, so trust me, we're having Kyle on again. Some really interesting detail. He's an impressive guy. Before we get to that conversation, however, I want to play another excerpt from Channel 67. This episode went up on Wednesday. It's from Chapter 2 of our look back at the 2014 Cup run. I'd also like to remind you that if you want game-by-game reactions and thoughts from me and your fellow fans, you can check out Kings Talk replays after they air live on the ESPN LA Kings Radio Network. Channel 67 and Kings Talk can both be found at lakings.com/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts from. Here's a short clip from Channel 67. Hope you enjoy that and my conversation with Kyle. By the time he joined the Kings in 2008, he was already 2-0 in Game 7s in his career, scoring 4 points in those two games. During the 2014 Cup run, Williams had 25 points in 26 games and improved his record in Game 7s to 5-0, maintaining that 2 points per game pace, earning him the Conn Smythe Trophy and the nickname Mr. Game 7. A nickname that I had heard he was never really comfortable with.
I've warmed up to Mr. Game 7 the longer that I've been out of the league. I've been out for crazy since COVID, since the end of COVID. So I'm warming up to it a little bit. But, Game 7 was, it's kind of a cool nickname to have, but I didn't like the attention it really brought to me because the attention should have been on how good our team was in Game 7s. And that's why I got it, right? That's why I got it, because our team was so successful in Game 7s, especially in 2014, but I'm warming up to it a bit.
It was precisely that mentality that was so surprising about that reunion. Even 10 years later, none of them were comfortable talking about themselves. In fact, we had a few players threaten to back out of participating completely if we made it too much about them or their individual contributions. It was really impressive. Fortunately, they were all more than happy to talk about each other and what the team accomplished as a whole. Drew Doughty, Jarrett Stoll, and Daryl Sutter weighed in on the importance of Mr. Game 7.
He's just a clutch performer. Mr. Game 7, yeah, but Justin was just a gamer in every game. He did a lot of things that made other players around him better. He's such a good competitor, good at all areas of the game, and he was clutch for us in Game 7s, but he was just good throughout the entire playoffs and every single game, and he was such a big part to our room and to our team.
I just think he wanted to be that guy. He wanted to be the guy that took it upon himself, in so to speak, and come up in those big pressure situations. He did not shy away from it. A lot of guys would shy away from stuff like that. I don't even know if I would be that comfortable in certain situations where he would want to be out there. He'd want to jump over the boards right away and be a factor and help the team win. And that was just the kind of guy, that kind of makeup that he has and the mindset that he has. I think that's why he played so well in those Game 7s.
He was dialed in, and he was another, everybody thinks that there was those lines and there was those, he played with them and all that. If you look at it, it wasn't true at all. Really, Justin played left wing, right wing, played top, played in four, all over it, and big goals he was on the ice for. So it just tells you a lot of guys, can do it during the regular season or when it doesn't matter, but when you get in the center of the storm, them guys that want to get in the middle, it's all quiet. That's a guy like Willie, right? So Mr. Game 7, that's the guy in the middle. That's the guy that gets up in the bottom of the 10th, bases loaded, 2 out, last strike. Like, same, that's what he did in hockey.
One of the challenges of telling a story like this in a purely audio format is that I have to keep track of all the voices so that you can keep track of all the voices. But for the next question I asked, I'm not going to identify who answered, because the answer was always the same. Yes, the 2014 Western Conference Finals between the LA Kings and the Chicago Blackhawks was one of the best playoff series ever played.
The best series I've ever been a part of, yes, absolutely. I've said this at length, just the ups and downs, the swings, the talent that was on the ice, night in, night out. The goaltending to the talented players out there. I mean, it was everything that you needed in a hockey series, with the overtimes and 2 championship teams just not saying no.
The best playoff series I've ever played in, from an entertainment value. But it's also, I remember we won Game 7 in Anaheim, and we're sitting on the bus driving that 30-minute bus drive, and it's like essentially, and this is no disrespect to the Rangers, but all of us in the back of the bus are saying, we're playing for the Stanley Cup right now. That was our mentality, and that's what I think, that was the Stanley Cup final for the league. But I also just remember Game 1 they beat us, and Game 2 we spanked them. I think Karts had a hat trick. We beat him like 6-2 or something. And that was the first game that we it kind of like gave us the belief. This Game 2, I really remember that because 2013, it wasn't close. We lost in 5, but it was not close. Like they dominated every game. So I think our group the next year was like, can we play with this? They've won 2 cups at this point. And that first game didn't go well for us, but that second game gave us the belief, and then we built on that, but then, Kings like to make it hard on ourselves.
And it's got to be up there. I'm sure there were some other really good series that we've played and, a couple other teams played, but, you think about the matchups, I mean, pretty much throughout the lineup, you had somebody to go head-to-head with, whether that was, Quickie against Crawford or Dewey against Keith, and, you go down the line, and in order to win the series, you had to beat the guy across from you. There wasn't just one guy that was the difference maker. It was everybody that needed to pull in the same direction, and, in the end, I mean, you could say we got a little bit lucky, but I think we poured everything out on the line, and we deserved that bounce in OT, and therefore deserved to win the series.
So much fun. Going into the United Center, you already know what to expect, but that was different because we knew that we needed to win. We wanted to win, and we deserved it.
We knew what that series was going to be like, and I would say that it probably lived up to the hype. We had kind of butt heads, the past few years. It was no secret that Chicago was a perennial powerhouse at that time, and obviously it had a lot of success and a lot of star power, and so we knew what we were in for, and like I said, I think it lived up to the hype, and those were some pretty intense games.
Best hockey I've seen. It's hard because we talk about Jess, where you do it as a fan. Every game I was watching, because it was live, right? You can watch stuff on TV, but when you're watching it live, I was like, this is like finally, I'm like big wrestling, and it's just like they finally took the 2 guys that we were both winning cups, going back and forth. Finally, they put them in the same ring together, and it was epic. It was epic.
Ever wonder what top athletes eat to perform at their best? Superfood Direct, the preferred catering partner of the LA Kings, is here to fuel your game. For athletes, nutrition isn't just fuel, it's the key to peak performance. Superfood Direct delivers chef-prepared meals that help you build strength, boost endurance, and recover faster. With over 11 years of experience, every meal is balanced with the perfect mix of proteins, carbs, and healthy fats to power you on and off the ice. Ready to fuel your greatness? Visit superfd.com/direct and get 20% off your first order with promo code LA20. That's LA20. Joining me now, we're in my office at El Segundo, California, Kings headquarters. Kyle Lamkey. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. I don't know what your title is.
I am the Senior Director of Engineering and Operations for the Kings.
Okay, so when I'm casually referring to you around the office, apologies in advance if this is insulting, you're the ice guy.
I'm the ice guy. Not insulting at all.
All right, good. So for those of you who don't know what an ice guy is, that's the guy who takes care of the ice at the buildings, the multiple buildings that the Kings need ice taken care of at. How does one become an ice guy?
Kind of by dumb luck. It was a part-time job I started with when I was 14 and just sort of stuck with it through high school and then, started university and, hey, this is a great way to continue paying the bills. And I was able to sort of work it around school, evenings, weekends, that kind of thing. And basically what happened is I just ended up sticking with the guy that introduced me to the industry. He went to the private sector. And I sort of followed him around until I went to a semi-pro building and then eventually to an NHL club with the Oilers to open the building in Edmonton for that club.
Okay, I had a part-time job when I was 14. I was a babysitter. Then I think when I was 15, I got permission to be a barista. I'm not serving coffee. Like when you go to school after having gotten a part-time job as apprentice ice guy or whatever the title is, like, do you study the...
Yeah, basically I was focused on business
Mm-hmm.
and just sort of found that it wasn't something that I was passionate about and sort of I kept finding myself falling back to this power engineering world and ice operations world. It's something that's always fascinated me and really the thing that people don't really know about ice quality is it's a direct reflection of the effort that you put into the product. You know, you can have great ice because you try real hard and you can have crappy ice because water freezes below a certain temperature.
Fair enough. So I have heard over the years, just being a hockey fan, random conversations about how complicated the whole thing is. There needs to be pipes under the ground to control temperature, et cetera, et cetera. How thick is the ice? How much lead time do you need to lay ice? I've got a million questions about ice.
Sure, yeah. So our initial install happens late August, early September at Crypto. It takes us 3 days, 1 day to paint and lay the lines and logos, and then 2 days to build it up. We build it up in extremely fine layers, and what that does is it allows us to eliminate air entrapment in the ice, which creates a harder, faster, more dense sheet of ice.
Okay, now I've got 1,000,001 questions about ice. There was a day 2 years ago, I think, maybe last year, where one of the rinks here at El Segundo, we were set up for media day, and a compressor broke overnight or something, and everybody showed up the next morning and the rink had melted. If in case of emergency, how long does it take to lay those layers? How long to get an ice rink
Really,
back
3
up?
days is pushing it.
Okay.
We have a lot of powerful equipment at Crypto that we wouldn't have in any of our other facilities, so certainly our capacity to do that in a faster turnaround exists there that doesn't exist here. But 3 days is really the ideal amount of time to do it correctly. We do have a lot of fail-safes in place where, at Crypto, our advanced technology there gives us more monitoring capabilities and alarms, alerts us to problems like that in real time, versus in some of our other facilities where we perhaps have older equipment and less automation.
Have you ever gotten the 3 a.m. phone call because an alarm went off and something failed?
Yeah, fortunately for me, I work on the team side in this role, but certainly in my previous roles, the ice plant is something that keeps the building guys up at night. And just like it does here for the folks at Crypto, I know that it did for me when I was in my other facilities.
So the biggest surprise for me, and I don't remember how old I was when I figured it out, but I never really gave any thought to the fact that the Lakers play in the same building as the Kings. Was at the Forum, now at Crypto. I just sort of took it for granted that, of course they do. And I had not given any, I was probably in my late teens when I realized, the ice doesn't go away. They lay, and for those of you who are not aware, this might blow your mind the way it did when I was 16 or 17, there's a layer of rubber mats, it looks like.
They're fiberglass 4x8 panels.
Okay.
They're insulated panels, and so what we do is we put those on top of the ice. We actually warm the ice temperature up so it's not becoming brittle.
How warm can you get it before it's too warm?
32 is the melting point, so we don't like to go anywhere near that.
Sure.
But we'll go, 21, 22. Whereas on a game day, our slab target is 13.5 to 14. So quite a bit warmer than we run it on game day, and basically that's just to prevent dehydration of the ice and the ice from becoming too brittle.
maybe I'm just an idiot, but how does ice get dehydrated? It seems to me like it's made of water.
Yeah, it is. It's the atmosphere around the ice that actually will pull humidity from the ice. So the ice is a giant frozen ice cube in the middle of a building. And as the air inside that building circulates and dries, it naturally will pull moisture from the ice.
I've heard a lot of people complain lately about how cold it is in the press box. Is that your fault? I like it personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's my fault. That's certainly one of the positives in the Clippers moving to their own facility is the enhanced ability for us to condition the building between events. So, with some more dark days available, we're not necessarily doing a ton more ice maintenance because we've got a pretty consistent program on the ice front. But what we are doing is we're doing a better job of conditioning the building from a temperature, humidity, and dew point perspective.
So with the Clippers moving out, that was the sort of entryway to this conversation. That's how I tricked you into coming and talking to me. There are more dark days, as you said, but I imagine that means more concerts and other various events.
The goal is to always make sure that we're activating something at the facility and generating revenue. So for sure, those folks at Crypto are working on programming concerts, premium events, and other activations. So we haven't changed our strategy too much on the ice front. We've actually reduced our thickness. So historically, we've run 2 inches of ice at Crypto.com Arena, and now we're targeting 1.5 inches.
I'm gonna jump in right there because that also was one of the things that blew my mind when I first learned it. 2 inches does not seem like a lot, and over the course of a game, there are going to be areas of ice where guys are going to get their skate blades in it a lot, and we see the snow that gets kicked up. At any stage of your career, have you had a point where somebody just went through the ice and got down to the concrete?
I've never seen anybody go to the concrete, and that's why we sort of make sure that the league has some pretty specific targets that we need to meet in order to play a game. And so if we come anywhere close to those, there are some parameters in place that would identify a problem at the league level, and then the league would get involved and determine whether or not we were going to play. I've never seen it. 2 inches is the most in the league. And that's one of the reasons I came to Crypto was, I was intrigued by how difficult this building was to manage from an ice standpoint, unlike any other in the league for sure, and certainly in the industry. So it was a great experience for the 2 seasons I was here with all 3 teams. And, now we get to enjoy the benefits of one less team competing for time.
What about it makes it such a difficult building? Is it the temperature, the amount of events?
It's really, it's all of the above, and it's the lack of time in between events to condition the building and really get it to where you want it to be. Everything has a direct impact on something else. So, when it's warm and humid in the building, that has a direct impact on the surface playability. So the puck glide, the amount of snow, whether the snow is heavy and wet or whether it's light and fluffy. And those are all things that are felt at the player level as well.
Clippers left the building, but there was one other change, and that is the hole they punched in the side of the building, where now the sun theoretically can come streaming in through the windows. It doesn't. They have shades that they pull down. But has that affected at all the ice maintenance?
We're still in the early stages of data collection on that, and so it probably wouldn't be fair to say that it's had a negative effect one way or the other. It's something that we're monitoring, but it's nothing that's caused us any concern yet. We've sort of been managing with the building, when the shades go up and when the shades come down and how often they're open and closed. So really it's been a pretty good partnership with the building in determining, how we enhance the spectator look and feel of the building without compromising ice quality and building conditions.
From your perspective, has the ice been better this season or worse than previous seasons?
I think it's always good, and rather than using better or worse, I use consistent or less consistent. And I think certainly with our ability to condition the building, like you said, you're seeing more consistency in building temperatures and humidities, and again, that has a direct sort of impact on surface playability.
So every now and then, I can't remember which game it happened, but it was within the last 5 or 6 home games. There'll be areas of the ice where guys are falling down or pucks are bouncing over sticks. And I had never thought before that, saying this out loud might be insulting the work that somebody does. But my go-to thing was like always, bad ice, whatever. When you hear people on the broadcast or people like me who don't have any idea what we're talking about, does that annoy you?
No, it doesn't annoy me. I mean, it's something that sort of gives me a chuckle because one of the things that I'm sort of very intimately monitoring throughout a game is the consistency across the entire surface. We've actually just developed a product that's going to be deployed across the league that will enhance facility monitoring. And so we moved from an infrared camera, an IRC camera, that was giving us one point of reference on the surface. And we've implemented and installed at Crypto.com Arena a thermal imaging camera that gives us 91,000 points of reference. So now our decisions are really being made on the entire sheet and not just one specific point.
What's the coolest toy in the arsenal of an NHL ice guy?
It's the camera for sure.
Yeah.
I think the go-to that a lot of people are drawn to are the Zambonis. And, from my standpoint, the Zamboni portion of the entire operation is the easiest. It's, for me, the challenge is temperatures, refrigeration, not getting too cold, not getting too warm. Our team has a very specific desire to be at 21 degrees on the surface. And, on the nights that we miss that mark, certainly there's some player feedback that lets us know that whether it was too warm or whether it was too cold.
You just said the team has a very specific desire. Why is it that specific?
That's a great question. In a lot of roles, I've always wondered, do they know? Do they really know what the temperature on the surface is? And, through the course of 3 seasons here, I can confidently say, from the feedback I received from our club is yes, they do know. And I think that's just a preference based on other facilities they play in, maybe some of the ways they've got their equipment conditioned, and then, some consistency in what they experience at the practice facility.
So many people, or some people may not know that the pucks are also frozen. Are you involved in that at all?
Yeah, so we freeze the pucks at 14 degrees, so the pucks are never outside of a freezer.
Why 14 degrees?
It's the magic number.
Okay.
So there's a freezer in the team dressing room where the pucks live every day that we're not at the facility. There's a puck freezer in the Zamboni room, and there's a puck freezer in the penalty box. So the pucks are transferred in by way of cooler to each one of those locations, and they're never exposed to the atmosphere for more than 3.5 minutes.
How many pucks?
Usually we load the freezer with about 40 pucks a game.
Did you ever run out?
Nope, hasn't happened yet.
I mean, I can't imagine. There's a lot of pucks over the glass to run out of for you. All right, earlier in our conversation, I mentioned that a compressor broke. I pretended like I knew what a compressor was. I don't. What does a compressor do, and how much equipment is under the concrete, under the ice?
So really, under the concrete, we just have 2 sets of lines. One's a cooling set and one's a heating set. The heating set prevents the cooling set from creating permafrost and heaving the concrete floor. And all the other equipment lives in the ice plant or the refrigeration room, which is on a vent level at Crypto, just outside of the engineering office. We've got a series of compressors there. We've got full redundancy in our pumps, in our chillers, in our compressors. So in the professional environment, one of the league requirements is that you have redundancy. So in the event we lose a compressor, we're still able to operate our games without any interference.
So you got a backup goalie, you got a backup compressor.
We got a backup compressor, we got a backup chiller.
Do you have an emergency backup compressor, any buck?
I'd love to say that we do, but those failures are extremely few and far between, and the team at Crypto does a really great job of maintaining that equipment. So
not every arena in the National Hockey League will have to deal with the kind of weather fluctuation. Well, fluctuation. It's hot here, but also we get earthquakes. I'm assuming that when Crypto.com was built, it was built with that in mind. How much did you have to learn about potential damage due to earthquakes to take over this gig?
Not really. It's pretty minimal in terms of how it affects the ice. The ice isn't so compressed in those dashers that it just blows apart. There's an ability to let it relax by warming it up, and obviously as it expands, the boards hold it in and it becomes more of a pressurized component. But yeah, I would say that we've had no negative impacts from any of the small earthquakes that we've experienced here.
If I wanted to, how long would it take me to learn how to drive a Zamboni?
Depends if you want to drive it or if you want to drive it well.
I want to scrape the ice to your standards.
That's something that takes years of development. And the most important thing in terms of a driver's skill is really not the ability to drive the pattern. It's the ability to react when something, doesn't go necessarily according to plan. So, maybe the machine will have a fuel issue and, it's getting the machine off the ice or isolating your water so that you don't burn a hole in the ice. It's all of those things in terms of reaction when something doesn't go right, opposed to driving around in circles, driving the pattern and laying the water.
In order to become an ice guy, sorry to keep just calling you an ice guy, do you have to do every other job? Like, have you been a Zamboni driver and every other job?
Yeah, I've been a Zamboni driver. I've done that. I did that for about 16 years.
Wow.
I still, from time to time, will get on the machine just to make sure it's a skill that
I love that you call it
don't
the
let
machine,
lapse.
by the way.
But no, I mean, I've been fortunate enough through the series of my career to work for 3 professional sports teams, work at the Olympic level, and so I'm pretty well versed in the way that the equipment works in every facet, and I think that just leads to the trust we're able to build within our ice team at Crypto.
How difficult is it to do something like an Olympic event where shorter time frame, I imagine less familiarity with the facilities, less time to get familiar?
Yeah, it was probably the most challenging event that I've worked in my career. I was in Korea, so on top of the temporary nature of the venues and the infrastructure, there was obviously a language barrier that needed to be overcome. But what I'll say is that the cultural experience of that was like none other. Brilliant-minded individuals working there. You said, how long does it take to be a Zamboni driver? One of our core requirements of that games was to train the local crew to drive the Zambonis. So that was a great experience. I had a great time taking people that didn't speak my language and teaching them how to drive Zambonis. And when we walked away 57 days later, there was certainly a sense of pride in having accomplished that.
Is there an Elvis of ice guys? Is there like one guy that everybody looks to? Sorry, Elvis.
Yeah, I would say, he just retired. Dan Craig was sort of the ice guy at the NHL. I was fortunate enough to cross paths with him when I was in Edmonton. And really sort of he's been somebody who's made himself available as a mentor to a bunch of us in the industry. He just retired, and so he's enjoying retirement, but certainly continues to take our calls when we have questions or a desire to pick his brain.
Is there room for, what's the word I'm looking for? Is there room for revolutionizing the ice game? Is there room for leaps forward?
Yeah, I think that's what we're working on right now through the development of the new automation technology that we've implemented at Crypto. A lot of it will remain human nature and decisions based on, our knowledge of how things react under certain conditions. But being able to enhance the data collection and make decisions based on a variety of factors versus the historic one or two is going to be the thing that will revolutionize the business and really just give all of the buildings across the league and certainly all of our players the consistency they desire.
It sounds like it's just as much art as it is science. Like, I don't know if you ever watched Ted Lasso, but that opening scene where he goes out and he touches the grass and he says, feels different, but feels the same. Do you ever just go out on the ice sheet and just touch the ice?
It's funny. I don't touch the ice as much, but if you watch us, when the shovel crew goes out each time, Duda, who's our guy at the gate, he's been there forever. He'll actually give us a shovel full of snow. And so we'll sort of feel the snow the granules in our hand. And that will let us know whether things are wet and heavy or light and fluffy. And obviously, the best playability on the surface for the players is when things are light and fluffy. Heavy, wet snow impacts the puck play, bounces, all of that stuff. So I can tell pretty easily whether we're having a good night or a bad night just based on how the snow feels.
Have you ever had a player come and yell at you or a coach or something?
No, our players have been very constructive in the feedback they give us and always very polite. That hasn't always been the case in my career, but that's just the nature of my job.
One of my favorite behind-the-scenes stories is, and I don't know if I think it was before you came here, but during COVID, the people that were shoveling the ice were not granted access to event level because of proximity to players and coaches. And so they had a bunch of Kings employees who already had event level access, who had skating experience, shovel the ice. And from what I'm told, the players spoke up and said, this is so much better than before. Does that sound like a story that makes sense to you?
Yeah, I think historically the shovel crew was perhaps more of an entertainment feature for a lot of these clubs. And I think what you'll see now is, when you're evaluating our crew, they know what they're doing. They need to be out there strictly business. They're not out there as part of the show. And they're certainly reminded from time to time if they're having too much fun out there with the spectators. So They're there to do a job, and it's an important job for the players. Both from a safety and performance standpoint. So, yeah, it makes sense that, if you move from an entertainment base to strictly a strategic operation, that things would improve.
The irony, of course, is that before it was an entertainment function, it didn't exist. When I was a kid growing up watching the NHL, they didn't the commercial breaks were less frequent and maybe shorter, and now it's 3 times a period. They're out there scraping snow. How much does scraping the snow improve the ice and improve the game?
Yeah, it improves it quite a bit. And I think in buildings where temperature and humidity is a factor, not allowing that snow to sit on the surface and collect humidity from the air, slow things down, really makes an impact. But, I think the other thing that's really sort of evolved over time is the equipment that the players are using. Players can change their steel a few times a period, and they're not using the equipment that they did historically. So certainly, as we continue to push the limits on equipment and revolutionizing the game to make it faster, all of these little things add up and are certainly beneficial.
Now, this is behind the scenes. An email came out earlier this year that said if you wanted a new office chair, you were part of the team organizing the warranties on office chairs. How did that fall? Like, to be clear, everybody I know that works here has some responsibility that is sort of an odd out of, I booked the road engineers, for example. I don't know how that got to me, but it did.
Yeah, I think my core function is obviously ice operations and quality control on our ice surfaces. But, I also realize that we have 42 nights a year where we're doing that, and I'm strategically focused on only that at Crypto. So, on the days that I'm not focused on those core priorities, I'm doing things like, enhancing our office environment and
replacing
your name tag with a new logo
on the door,
name tag. Today I'm here participating in a figure skating show that our partner in ASEC is hosting here for the holidays. So it's sort of a multifaceted job, and I think that's one of the things that keeps it entertaining and get it from getting too stale for me.
Well, if it's all right with you, I'm just going to keep calling you our ice guy.
Sure, you can call me whatever you want, but ice guy certainly fits the role.
Kyle Lamkey, thanks so much for joining me.
All right, thanks, Jesse.